Good morning, students. Today we are going to see the paper MEd first year paper, Advanced Educational Research and Statistics. Topic: Quantitative Research Design. Quantitative Research Design. Research designs are the specific procedures involved in the research process, data collection, data analysis, and report writing. 8 different research design frequently used in educational research. The first 3 are quantitative, the next 3 are qualitative, and the final 2 combined quantitative and qualitative approaches. The quantitative and qualitative approaches are, first 3 are the quantitative designs: experimental design, correlational design, and survey designs are the quantitative designs, and the grounded theory design and ethnographic design are the qualitative design. And the quantitative and qualitative designs are narrative research design, mixed methods design, and action research design. These are the research qualitative and quantitative designs. First one is experimental design. Some quantitative researchers seek to test whether an educational practice or idea makes a difference for individuals. Experimental research procedures are ideally suited for this study. Experimental design, also called intervention studies, or group comparison studies, are procedures in quantitative research in which the investigator determine whether an activity or material make a difference in results for participants. Researchers assess this impact by giving one group one set of activities called an intervention and withholding the set from another group. Then second, correlational design. In some studies, researchers may be unable to provide an intervention or to assign individual to groups. Moreover, researcher focuses more on examining the association or relation of one or more variables than in testing the impact of activities or material. Correlational designs are procedures in quantitative research in which investigators measure the degree of association or relation between two or more variables using the statistical procedure of correlational analysis. This degree of association, expressed as a number, indicates whether the two variables are related or whether one can predict another. To accomplish this, researchers study a single group of individuals rather than two or more groups or in an experiment. Then the third one is survey design. In another form of quantitative research, researcher may not want to test an activity or materials, or may not be interested in the association among variables. Instead, researcher seeks to describe trends in a large population of individuals. In this case, a survey is a good procedure to use. Survey design are procedures in quantitative research in which researcher administer a survey or questionnaire to a small group of people called a sample to identify trends in attitudes, opinion, behavior, or characteristics of a large group of people called the population. Then the next one is grounded theory design. Instead of studying a single group, researcher might examine a number of individuals who have all experienced an action, interaction, or process. Grounded theory designs are systematic qualitative procedures that researchers use to generate a general explanation grounded in the views of participants, called a grounded theory, that explains a process, action, or interaction among people. The procedure for developing this theory include preliminary collecting interview data, developing and relating categories or themes of information, and composing a figure of visual model that the general explanation. In this way, the explanation is grounded in the data from participants. From this explanation, researcher construct predictive statement about the experiences of individual. Then ethnographic design. Then the next one is ethnographic design. Researcher may be interested in studying one group of individual and examine them in the setting where they live and work, and in developing they interact. An ethnographic study is well suited for this purpose. Ethnographic design are qualitative procedures for describing, analyzing and interpreting a cultural group's shared patterns of behavior, belief and language that develop one time. In ethnographic, the researchers provides a detailed picture of the culture sharing group, drawing the various sources of information. The ethnographer also describes the group within each setting, explores themes or issues that develop over time as a group interact and detailed the group. Then the next one is narrative research design. Researchers may not be interested in describing and interpreting group behavior or ideas, or in developing an explanation grounded in the experiences of many individuals. Instead, researcher wishes to tell the stories of one or two individuals. Narrative research design are qualitative procedures in which researchers describe the lives of individuals, collect and tell stories about those individual lives, and narrate about their experiences in education. These stories often relate to school classroom experiences or activities in schools. Then mixed methods design. Researcher decide to collect both quantitative data, that is quantifiable data, and qualitative data, that is text or images. The core argument for a mixed methods design is that the combination of both forms of data provides a better understanding of a research problem than either quantitative or qualitative data by itself. Mixed method design are procedures for collecting, analyzing and mixing both quantitative and qualitative data in a single study or in a multi-space series of studies. In this process, researchers need to decide on the emphases researchers will give to each form of data or priority. Which form of data researchers will collect first, congruent or sequential. How researchers will mix the data, integrating or connecting, and whether researchers will use theory to guide the study. Then action research design. Then the last one is action research design. Like mixed methods research, action research design often utilized both qualitative and quantitative data, but they focus more on procedures useful in addressing practical problems in schools and the classroom. Action research design are systematic procedures used by teachers to gather quantitative and qualitative data to address improvement in their educational setting, their testing and the learning of their students. In some action research designs, researchers seek to address and solve local practical problem such as a classroom discipline issue for a teacher. In other studies, their objective might to be empower, transform and enumerate individuals in educational settings. These are the quantitative and qualitative designs. Then survey design. Then the next one is survey design. Most people are familiar with the surveys. We often receive surveys to record opinion or voters, to register approval or consumer product, and to measure opinions about electoral candidate. To many people, survey research is simply a survey instrument such as a questionnaire or interview. Although we survey people using an instrument in educational research, the instrument is only one aspect of a broader procedure in survey design. This section defines survey research, identify when researchers use it and how it development assesses the key characteristic of it and advances the steps in conducting and evaluating this design. Survey design with its many applications. Survey research is a popular design in education. Survey research design are procedures in quantitative research in which investigators administer a survey to a sample or to the entire population of people to describe the attitudes, opinion, behaviors or characteristics of the population. In this procedure, survey researchers collect quantitative numbered data using questionnaires. Example, mailed questionnaires or interview, one-on-one interview, and statistically analyze the data to describe trends about responses. Then responses to questions and to test research questions are hypotheses. They also interpret the meaning of the data by relating result of the statistical test back to past research studies. Survey designs differ from experimental research in that they do not involve a treatment given a participants by the researcher. Because survey researchers do not experimentally manipulate the condition, they cannot explain cause and effect as well as experimental researchers can. Instead, survey studies describe trends in the data rather than offer rigorous explanations. Survey research has much in common with correlational designs. Survey researchers often correlate variables, but they focus in directed more toward learning about a population and less on relating variables or predicting outcomes as in the focus in correlational research. Use of survey research for researcher. Researchers use survey research to describe trends such as community interest in school-bound issue or state or national trend about mandatory student uniform policies. Researchers also use survey research to determine individual opinions about policy issues such as whether studies need a choice of schools to attend. Surveys help identify important beliefs and attitudes of individuals, such as college students believe about what constitute behavior in dating relationship. They may be used to follow up with graduate 5, 10 or 15 years after college to learn about their present. Surveys provide useful information to evaluate programs in schools, such as the success of a program in science education. Then development of survey research. Surveys have been widely used in education for many years. Early surveys date back to 1870 when 34-page International Survey of National Educational System, Stanley Hall surveyed children, and by 1909, survey examined social problems including educational issues ranging from educational planning for school building to issues of children in classroom who are slow learners. During the period of World War I to World War II, the modern survey as we know it began to emerge. Factors that contributed to its development were improvements in sampling techniques and the development of different scales of measurement. Surveys found wide application in many social science fields, including marketing research, journalism, public opinion research and organization, and Organization by establish standard question through surveys. Then types of survey design. Then the next one is types of survey design. Despite the many applications of surveys today, there are still only two basic types of research surveys: cross-sectional and longitudinal survey. Researchers use cross-sectional design to collect data about current activities, opinion or belief. Longitudinal design are used to study individuals over time. Then cross-sectional survey design. The most popular form of survey design used in education is a cross-sectional survey design. In a cross-sectional survey design, the researcher collect data at one point in time. For example, when middle school children complete a survey about testing, they are recording data about their present views. This design has the advantage of measuring current attitude or group of 28 years old is studied. While the individual studied each time might be different, they must have been 18 years old in the year 2001 to quality as representatives of the group. Then the key characteristic of survey research. Then the key characteristic of survey research. Whether a survey design is longitudinal design or cross-sectional, they are key characteristic of both that will help researchers design a survey or read and evaluate a published survey study. Survey researchers engage in the process of sampling from a population, collecting data through questionnaires or interview, designing instruments for data collection, obtaining a high response rate. First one is sampling from a population. Survey researchers typically select and study a sample from a population and generalize results from the sample to a population. We need to first define three terms: the population, the target population or sampling frame, and the same. At the broadest level, in the population in which a group of individuals possesses one characteristic that distinguishes them from other group. For example, we might have a population made up of high school teachers, individuals who all teach in high school, or school counselor, individual who occupy counselor position in all levels of educational schools. At a more specific level, researchers do not always study an entire population, either because they cannot identify the individual or because they cannot obtain list of names. Lists are used when mailing out a questionnaire. In practical operational terms, researchers study a target population, sometimes called the sampling frame. This is the list of record of individual in a population that a researcher can actually obtain. For example, researcher might obtain a list of all secondary high school teachers in one school district. This list constitutes the target population or sampling frame. From the target population, researchers choose a sample at the most specific level. Researchers select a sample from the target population. These individuals are the people studied. Then questionnaire and interviews. Although many different forms of survey exist, survey researchers typically collect data using two basic forms: questionnaires and interviews. Researchers need to consider the form and weigh the advantages and disadvantages of each. Researcher can distinguish these forms by examining who complete or records the data on the Instrument. The participant called respondents or interviews are the researcher. A questionnaire is a form used in a survey design that participants in a study complete and return to the researcher. The participant choose answers to questions and supplied basic personal or demographic information. An interview survey, however, is a form on which the researcher records answers supplied by the participant in the study. The researcher asks a question from an interrogate, listen for answers or observes behaviors and records responses on the survey. The quantitative interview procedures distinguished here are not to be confused with quantitative interviewing. On quantitative survey interviews, the investigator uses a structured or semi-structured interview consisting of mostly closed-ended questions, provides response opinions to interviews, and records their responses in qualitative survey interviews. An interviewer asked open-ended question without response opinion and listens to and records the comments of the interviews. Several different types of questionnaires and interviews are used in quantitative survey research. Here highlighted the major types used in education: mailed questionnaires, web-based questionnaires, one-on-one interviews, focus group interview, telephone interviews. Instrument design. Designing good survey instruments is a challenging and complex process. Researchers should first consider whether a survey instrument is available to measure their variables. Researchers might also consider modifying an existing instrument. If neither of these approaches will work, design their own instrument. Response rate. Survey researchers seek high response rate from participants in a study so that they can have confidence in generalizing the result to the population. Under study, when using interviews, the response rate is high because individuals interviewed typically consistent to the interview. In advanced, however, when questioners are asked, the number of responses returned will vary. In either case, survey researchers place emphasis on obtaining a high response rate to their questionnaire or interview on the instrument that are returned. The survey researcher is also concerned about whether the returned responses are biased. Even a small return rate may not be biased and be acceptable in survey research, although response rate is important. Bias is a larger concern than return rate because if the returned responses are biased, the database will be inadequate regardless of the return rate. Then the next one is steps in conducting survey research. Steps in conducting survey research. They are The steps in conducting research are 8 steps are included. Then first one is decide if a survey is a best design to use. Then second one is identifying a research question or hypothesis. Then the third one is identifying the population, the sampling frame and the sample. Then the fourth one is determine the survey design and data collection procedure. Then the next one is develop or locate an instrument. Then the sixth one is administer the instrument. Then the seventh one is analyze the data to address the research question or hypothesis. Then the eighth one is write the report. First then the first one is Decide if a survey is the best design to use. Researcher need to decide whether survey research is the best design to use in a study. Surveys help describe the trends in a population or describe the relationship among variables or compare groups. Instance where surveys are most suitable are to assess trends or characteristics of a population, learn about individual attitude, opinion, belief, and practices, evaluate the success or effectiveness of a program, or identify the needs of the community. There are the several advantages to using survey. Researchers can administer them in a short time. They are economical as a means of data collection, and they can reach a geographically depressed population. Further, researcher can the participant without biasing their responses. However, survey data is self-reported information, reporting only what people think rather than what they do. Sometimes the response rates are low and researchers cannot make claims about the response representative of the result of the population. As mentioned earlier, survey do not control for many variables that might explain the relationship between the independent and dependent variable, and they do not provide participant flexibility in responding to questions unless open-ended questions are included. Then the second one is identifying the research question or hypothesis. Describe the characteristic or trends of a population of people, such as the frequency or using male high school students, comparing groups in terms of specific attitude, such as a comparison of teachers and administrators about attitude towards in-service learning. Then identifying the population, the sampling frame, and the sample. The process of survey research begins with identifying the population. These steps require defining the population, determining the number of people in it, and assessing whether researchers can obtain a list of names, the sampling frame for the sample. Also, the population may need to be satisfied before sampling, so select characteristics of the population. Example, male and females are represented in a sample. One researcher have identified the target population and compiled a list of its members. Researchers can select the sample, preferably using random sampling procedures. Researcher will need to identify an adequate sample size using a sampling error formula. Then the next one is determine the survey design and data collection procedure. The researcher must also determine if the survey study will be cross-sectional or longitudinal. The decision to use a cross-sectional design relates to the nature of the problem studies, access to participants, and the time available to the researchers for data collection. For example, learning about the longitudinal development of adolescent social skills in schools require following adolescents over time and devoting extensive time to data collection. In contrast, examine parents' attitude towards discipline in school requires a cross-sectional study at one point in time to assess attitude immediately and quickly. Consider also whether data collection will be based on questionnaires mailed or electronic, or interview individual focus group or telephone, and weigh the advantages and disadvantages of each form. Then the next one is develop or locate an instrument. Researchers need an instrument to collect or measure the variable in a study. In the earlier to locate an instrument than to develop one, standards of reliability and construct validity need to be applied to scores from existing instruments before researchers select them for use. If a study addresses only a few variables, researchers can design their own instrument. A check for the reliability and validity of scores from their instrument during data analysis is most important. Then the next one is administer the instrument. This step is the most time consuming phase of survey research. Then the next one is analyzing the data to address the research question or hypothesis. The data analysis procedure will reflect the types of research question or hypothesis the researcher plan to address in a study. Analysis consists of noting response rate, checking for response bias, conducting descriptive analysis of all times, and then answering descriptive question. It might also involve testing hypothesis or research question using inferential statistics. Then the last one is write a report. Research should write the survey study using a standard quantitative structure that consists of an introduction, the review of the literature, the methods, the result, and the discussion specified in the methods section of the study. Detailed information about the survey procedure include in the discussion section. Comments about the generalizability of the result of the population. These are the survey and these are the steps of conducting the research design. Then today we are see the topics quantitative and qualitative research designs and the survey design. Qualitative and quantitative research designs are experimental design, correlational design, survey design, grounded theory design, ethnographic design, narrative design, mixed methods design, action research design. These are the quantitative and qualitative research designs. Today we are discussed the topic is the qualitative and quantitative research designs. Thank you.